today's topic is living at home. It's something that does affect a lot of us, and I think that one of the major problems personally, I do live at home at the moment because I was working locally, and it makes sense to, live with my family because it's easier and also it's cheap. I think that we discussed last time about rent, in fact, quite quickly, about how rent prices mean that if you are on a lower wage, a starting wage, then it's almost impossible to. It's not worth renting if you can avoid it. I think that. One of the problems I found, though, is that after a year or two, it's that feeling of stigma that comes with living at home. For me, it's something like, for example, it's the basics of being an adult, like having your girlfriend over, or having a mature relationship, or having any friends over and things like that, and having to ask somebody if it's okay to do things. Also, I think one of the things that kind of creeps up on me again, because I lived abroad, I lived on my own, completely self-sufficient, and living at university, of course, completely self-sufficient there. It's that you get used to to having your mum do stuff for you that you don't ask them to do, and it's something that sort of kind of changes your personality. I feel like that I've regressed into becoming almost teenager. I think the major point where you kind of have that little moment of crap is when you find yourself going, Mum, okay, fine, Dad, where's the remote, Dad? And it's like, it doesn't matter how old you are, you will always talk to them. And I think that also parents always see you as being quite young as well.
They always see the child.
But yeah, you're always going to be your mum's baby, and you're always going to be your dad's son.
No matter how old you are.
Yeah, exactly.
I think for me it was a bit different. I honestly moved out in January, actually, so not long.
Yeah.
So I came back after university at the age of 23 and kind of moved back home with my mum, and it's kind of like you almost regress because you sort of get used to living by yourself, being a sufficient adult, but then you end up going back home. Back to your mum.
Yeah, it's just such a weird thing to do, and I think that everyone has to do it now. I think that and for various reasons, but also because you have that sort of end of university kitchen floor reset where you're like, which I think we've discussed a few times, where you're just like, well, shit, now what? And then and it's very easy to sort of get into that pattern. Also, I found that becoming when you do leave it and going to work and finding a decent job that is enough to launch you into that level of independence that you've kind of already had a taste of it's weird. The real world is a lot more expensive than we were brought up thinking. I think we may have discussed that before, and it is a very different one. And I mean, for example, I personally never had to pay council tax.
It is a motherfucker.
Yeah, because I worked for a local paper, and the number of people who call up being like, the fucking bins.
Yeah, it is a motherfucker, and it gets you. Because a lot of the time when you first move into a place, you don't pay it straight away. You kind of sort everything out bit by bit. So I remember first getting this place, and then first thing you sort out is your gas and heating and everything like that.
Yeah, and that's what
you call up, and then they're like, when did you move into the property? And then you give them the details of when you moved into the property, and they start charging you from that date. And the same thing with council tax, you kind of sign up. That was probably one of the last things we signed up to. You put in the date when you moved in, and you end up having to pay about 300 quid or more.
Was that a month?
Not per. We don't pay that. We don't pay that per month. We pay over 100 quid per month.
100 quid a month. But I mean,
over 100 quid.
Yeah, and no wonder people get upset about potholes and stuff. I mean, in Surrey as well, fire department, people like that. Yeah, and because we dealt with the council a lot. And they do their best. I mean, I don't think that anyone's perfect. I don't think any organisation's perfect. I think that looking at things like the NHS and things like that, where there is no money because drugs are expensive, and because, for example, like chemo costs like 90 grand or something like that just for a simple chemo drug. I think it was per course. No, not even per course. It's per hit. Really, you're looking at. I think you're looking at 90 grand per hit, and surviving is expensive when it comes to that. But I mean, going back to council tax, you can see why people get pissed off.
Yeah, it is a motherfucker. Like, basically, living out by yourself is a motherfucker. You just feel like you're just being financially drained, especially in London. You know how the rent is like really expensive. And I think that's what, it's taken away sort of the stigma of living at home, because people are like, it's not the same thing, like living at home at our age. You're slightly older than me a few months, but like living at home at our age, you'd be almost seen in the past as a loser. Like, what's wrong with you?
I think that's
living into your 30s. But I don't think that's the case anymore.
It's almost like a movie stereotype of like sort of like, oh, he's 32, lives at home with his mum
in the basement.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, actually, it's actually like I have my like own space.
Yeah.
I don't. Mum and Dad were nice enough to go and build to have like an extension, because they kind of figured out early when we were about 18.
But I think in 2019 London, I think that stigma is not the thing. I know loads of people still living at home in their 30s. A lot of people are either can't afford to move out, or they're staying at home until they're able to save up to buy a place, because mortgage is actually so much cheaper than renting. Yeah, and I also think it's nice to actually have something for your money. I mean, like if I was to, well, because I mean, for me, my life sort of took that little turn that we've probably discussed 100 times, where I was meant to move abroad, and I think all the savings I had were aimed towards, like maybe putting down a mortgage, but you'd have to do it in conjunction with someone else, like you're doing. Yeah. You've got your fiance who you've committed to already to such an extent, but it does take. But that's like a huge part of it is that you've got that sort of personal commitment that also kind of ensures. It's really hard unless your parents are willing to help you. It's really hard to do it by yourself at the moment, and I think it kind of takes away part of the development of growing up, where like. It's sort of like you have stunted growth, because it used to be that you get to a certain age after uni or after school or college. I was talking
about this with my mum. She said that she bought her first house aged 24.
Yeah.
And it was this little we were looking at it because I was making this point to her earlier, and which, and that's the other thing as well, is that you still tell your mum. I don't know. I mean, I'm a bit of a mama's boy, but I still tell my mum, because we've always like. Because it's just like, it's like, Mum, like this thing happened. And like, like, oh no. And I'm like, I know.
Back to my previous point, I was saying, it's like you have a stunted growth. You don't get that opportunity to sort of go out by yourself, where you're able to maybe in your early 20s get your own place. Or you're sort of stuck at home. You go from your parents' home into your whatever relationship you're in, home place, and sharing with somebody. You don't get that opportunity to. I'm going to get my own flat for a little while and live by myself for a little while, kind of.
Yeah.
Like learn.
Or you can
kind of learn. You can do that as well, but I mean, like, kind of learn who you are as a person and sort of get into your own routines and kind of have your own space.
Also, face those challenges that come with owning your own place. I mean, for example, you were talking about council tax, and it's like, and that's a challenge that I won't face for another year, at least. At this rate, anyway.
So. I think that it really takes away a big part of that development.
Yeah.
Not that I want to do that now, because obviously I'm in a relationship, but when I was in my early 20s, I would have loved to have like that experience, being able to just set out by myself, sort of thing.
Yeah, and also pride that comes with it as well. Because I think that's another part of it, is that you lose a lot of pride, and it becomes quite... sorry, hiccups. Sets up for like microphones for like 20 minutes, and now the hiccups happen. No, but it's like it's weird that oh fuck, I've forgotten what I was saying.
Living at home and everything.
Oh yeah, living. Yeah, no, I know that part. But like, what was I trying to say? What was the beginning of that sentence? Shit. All right. Les suddenly stops working. Like, no. No, okay. I think that one of the things is that, I mean, it does feel to me like I miss worrying about bills, and that's so weirdly dumb. But it's like, it's sort of, because I mean, like in Indonesia, obviously my bills were relatively, I mean, they were kind of proportional, but I mean, I was paying 15 quid, 150,000 for water. And like, for cooking, like my gas, I had a gas hob, and that I used like one of those a year, and that was like a one-off expense, and the bloke comes around, and all the systems are all different, and it's all kind of weird, and that was kind of a really big part of the adventure, though. It's sort of learning all these things that you have to learn because of the challenge that life has just sort of given you with that independence. And I think that by the time we're actually able to go forward and do those things, they become less of an adventure and more of a chore, and more of something that, and like you said, that constant draining of your funds are kind of limited, especially at a time in life when you want to be able to use your money to enjoy your youth. I mean, we're only young once. You get to live once.
The interesting thing about money is never enough.
Yeah.
So I've been given like probably 2 or 3 pay rises this year.
You lucky sod.
Yeah, but still not enough. I'm like, you would think, I'm making a few extra quid now, like that should be going. But no, I'm like, I look this month, I'm like, oh, it's gone. What happened?
Yeah, exactly.
I haven't bought anything.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've got the same pair of shoes.
I've got nothing to show.
The same pair of shoes for a year, and they're falling apart. And I'm like, it's 60 quid or 50 quid or 40 quid or whatever for like some new trainers. And I'm like, let's have a little check of like the budget. But for some reason, spending £5 on a pint, not an issue. So I think that's probably where I'm going wrong here. What is it with you and those glasses today?
I want to move the glasses
all over the place, mate. It's like
I got too many.
You got like a little mini bar set up over there on your side, and there's me with a little teeny tiny hangover today. So I'm like, because
we told you to go out drinking last night.
I didn't. I went to my girlfriend's, and she was. She's fantastic, but she was like, "Darling, come to me." And like, I finished work, at my bar at like 6 or 7 o'clock, and so I went down to see her, and it's quite far. It's about an hour and a half away.
Yeah.
So by the time I get to her, it's like 9:30, 10 o'clock, and we were going to go out for a drink or whatever. But again, I mean, like it's cheaper and just as nice to stay in.
Yeah.
And, because I don't get to see her that often. It's it's just kind of nice to sort of have that sort of privacy. But again, with the flat, she's got her own flat because she's an extremely, very, very.
How long has she been living by herself?
Well,
going back on point.
I think she's been living by herself for about 7 years, but she's a little older than me, so she's but she also had to. I mean, even as a surgeon, had to stay at home for
she's
a couple of years.
Right?
No, well, she lives at the moment, but she's. I should probably edit that part. Not too many identifying characters. Anyway, okay, right.
I know. I was going to ask, what's the rent like?
Oh, the rent. I mean, she actually chose the place. Okay, so because compared to other surgeons, she lives in a place that's a little bit sort of in between. It's very much a commuter town. Actually, we were discussing it this morning, and for her, she knocked about 300 or 400 quid off her rent, but she's still paying like $750 for a little 2-bedroom flat. I mean, it's cozy as hell because she's made it that way.
That's not bad though.
It's not too bad.
That's not compared to London. I pay nearly double that for this place right here.
Yeah, because I mean, and her flat, I'd say, is maybe it's a different shape to this one, but it's like a little attic flat.
But she has a 2-bedroom.
But she uses the other one for a wardrobe because of course she bloody does. But yeah, and like I used to do the same thing. I used to own a 2-bedroom, little 2-bedroom up and down. Back in this is back in Indonesia.
Oh, you owned it?
Well, I mean, you pay the rent for a year out there, so it was like 35 million for the rent, which is the equivalent of about maybe $1.5 grand. No, so about $2 grand for a year's rent, and the house was great. I mean, I had to buy my own AC, and and you obviously, because it's like 30 degrees out there permanently, you don't need central heating, but you do need AC. But again, the electricity for that wasn't too much. It was about 200,000. So that's about 20. No, it's about 40. Yeah, I spent about 50 quid tops on bills, and if I added up the rent, maybe about 2 million.
So in the UK, have you lived by yourself in the UK?
I lived at student halls in London. I've also lived by myself. Actually, no, not really. Actually, I mean, only really as a student because I came back and did my journalism degree. But even then, I mean, I realised that I was paying per month for student accommodation for this room that was like a little teeny tiny ensuite with a single bed, and I mean, the desk took up a third of the damn room. Yeah, and I was paying, and it was in Islington, so I mean, like, but I was still paying I paid it for 1 month's rent there. I could have had a house out in Indo for a year, and it was crazy. I was like, how is this little teeny tiny space?
We are getting ripped off in London completely.
Oh, definitely, yeah. But
it's all about the proximity to the tube station. If you live near a tube station, you pay way more money, as opposed to if you live next to a train station. That's the whole thing. Like round here, because we're right now near Canary Wharf. Everybody from Canary Wharf wants to move down to North Greenwich. And it's pushed the price up so much around here. Really?
Yeah, because I mean, when I first came around here, not to see you, I was seeing another friend of mine about 5 years ago. Yeah. And I mean, his place was a little bit of a shit show, but it didn't seem to be that luxurious. But I think the gentrification has been happening across the city, and I think it's a good thing. On the one hand, I mean, but on the other hand, I mean, places that were cheap to live is where young people were going. Yeah. And now, those places have become trendy.
You know what kind of makes me wonder what happened to the community that used to be here? Just what happened to them? Where did they move to?
It's weird. Yeah,
it's like
where are people going? Like,
you knocked down a place where there was a community of people. There was obviously must have been a community of people. You've knocked it down. I mean, now there's a completely brand new place where everybody's all like.
I think they do. I think often these building companies do offer like properties at a discounted rate or something like that, or they'll buy the land off the person.
I was thinking. I went to my mum's area the other day. She lives in Kennington. And I just looked around, and I'm like, she lives in this big tower block in between like two new builds. Yeah, and there's like these 3 tower blocks that's been up since probably the 70s or 80s. And her block is right in the middle of these new builds that just came up last year. Right. I'm just looking around, new building, and then there's just my mom's tower block, which they did the cladding on to make it look all fancy. But then I was just thinking that. Eventually, they're going to knock this down, aren't they?
Well, yeah. And also
they're going to knock this down because if you look, it's in the middle of all these brand new, spanking new buildings.
And you got this absolute shit show.
Yeah. I wouldn't say it's a shit show, but it doesn't. It's not it doesn't look the same.
It's also the stigma that's attached to those kinds of tower blocks, which isn't necessarily always true. And also, I mean, like, you know,
eventually that's going to go. And then
I found one in Dorking.
My mom's already thinking of selling up and moving back home anyway, back to Jamaica. But
nice.
Yeah, but I'm thinking maybe 10 years time when I visit my birthplace, pretty much the place I grew up, went to school, and everything. I'll visit that where the building I grew up in is going to be gone, and it's going to be a brand new building, and it's not going to be unrecognizable. Yeah. And there's all these new cafes popping up out of nowhere.
Yeah, what happened to the old greasy spoons? I like greasy spoons.
Literally, I left when I moved down to North Greenwich. I went back after a month, and then there was like a Chinese restaurant that's been there for ages. I went back and it's a pub, a brand new bar, and all these people. I'm like, how did they knock this up so quickly?
That is a bit weird. Like, yeah, I think that.
How did they where did this come from? They just knocked it up out of nowhere.
Yeah, see, I had the opposite problem for me because I mean, in my area, the closest town to me is Reigate, and all of the buildings that are along the high street are listed. And when I used to come back every 6 months or so, and I found it was kind of a bit creepy because nothing changed. Yeah. And like, you know, for example, apart from maybe, and like I think we had they replaced where I used to work, which was this really, really lovely little fine dining place. Yeah. With the Nando's, and I was writing the papers at the time, and it was the biggest news to hit Reigate in a very long time. You know, like I mean, like, you know, you don't get your stabbings out there, but you just like, oh my goodness, a Nando's.
So where exactly is that?
In Reigate, it's just on the bottom end of the high street, you know, like towards Dorking. Okay. But like, you know, like you've got like sitcoms and stuff that are based in Dorking, like I don't know, like Home. I think there was one called Home, and that was pretty cool. But yeah, it's a bit odd. Because
nothing changes though.
Yeah, but also because I mean I live in a little village, so really nothing does change except I mean even if my neighbours, not my neighbours, but you know, like people up the road and whatever, if someone died, then
it's a big deal.
Well, no, nobody would either. No one would notice, or it's just a bit weird.
But if nothing changes, wouldn't that be more of a big deal as opposed to
it's creepy
where I am now, where like everything changes? So if I was to die, people moving in and out all the time.
Yeah, that's another thing. I mean, like, have you ever thought about? Because I mean, this is a new build flat, but like, how many people have died in these places and you don't know? Like, you could be sleeping in the same room that someone's died like 20 years ago.
The thing is about this area.
That's the other thing. Sorry, go on.
The thing about this area is that we don't know the neighbours. Don't like. I've literally. I mean, probably the only.
Did you say like one of the people was like from EastEnders?
Yeah, one of the people upstairs. I saw him at a glance from EastEnders. He was in EastEnders years ago, and like, I've only met like probably one neighbour because they have like this little Facebook group where they put like free stuff on there. Oh, right. So that SETI behind you, they gave it to us. It's actually a penthouse. Sweet. It's a penthouse, like the flats upstairs are penthouses.
How the hell did they get that down here?
Massive. Oh. So yeah, we went up and got it for free.
Nice.
Yeah.
Did you have a cheeky look around his place? Or?
Yeah, it was massive, like twice the size.
Nice.
The kitchen, living room was twice the size.
I just can't imagine making that much money.
Millions. Because this place is probably worth about $500,000.
Yeah, and it's like a little place, and you know, and like it's weird how that value has sort of changed. I mean, like, because I always imagine like, because if you spent $500,000 anywhere else. Apart from maybe New York,
you get a palace or something.
You get you get a house.
Yeah,
you know, it's crazy. But the thing is, though, I mean, London is one of the
the flat that we're buying across the road is worth about probably 540,000. It's a 2-bedroom flat. Yeah. It's probably about a bit bigger than this, but it's about £540,000.
My mate bought a flat in Battersea, and he
Battersea's crazy.
Yeah, he just sold it, and apparently at one point the house, his little flat, which is about the same size as this, actually smaller than this, was making more money than him and his wife combined, and they're both quite, they're both in managerial positions, and they're both doing very well for themselves. Like they're the kind, they're like kind of very middle class. They all went to private school. They ended up in like top 10 universities. And now they've all got managerial jobs. Those kind of jobs though that when someone tells you what they do,
you don't know what it means.
Oh, it's exhausting. And you sit there and you're like, okay, and all you can really thinking is how much. How much? How much is that? How much does that equate to?
How
in
much
money?
Is that in pounds?
It's like, I'm a sales representative / manager / entrepreneur / you're just like, okay, great. My brother's got that kind of job where it's like, he just told me that he fixes the big red button when it breaks, and they pay him a shit ton. And I was like, all right, well, that's all I needed to know.
The thing about London is like it's crazy where like you can rent like one of your bedrooms out and almost pay your mortgage.
Yeah, that's weird. And like council flats as well are like super. Yeah. I mean, there's money in council flats. Yeah. My mate's been paying like £600 for hers.
If you are like able to get hold of a council flat, you're laughing.
Yeah.
And you did the right to buy scheme. You're laughing. My mum did that back in the 90s.
Nice.
Like, I think I'm not gonna say exactly how much she paid, but how much it's worth now, but it's way more than triple or whatever you want to say. Like,
wow. So it's quadrupled or whatever. Tripled. Yeah, like that's crazy. It's just like, I mean, like you could just buy a house and sit in it and watch the money.
And if she had the foresight, she could have just bought. She thought about it. She just never went through with it. Just because of the basic life stuff got in the way. But she thought about buying a bunch of these places.
That would have been a good investment. And then all she's got to do is fix a boiler every now and then when it happens, or like send in BT. So, not BT. Sorry, BT's British Telecom. Don't send BT to fix your boiler.
They won't do it. But BT are awful anyway.
Well, yeah. Are we allowed to say? Yeah, of course we are. That's an opinion on it. Yeah, fuck
BT.
Yeah, fuck BT. Soon Labour will take over, and then I'm joking. Oh my god, what a prick! Like, who the fuck? What an idiot! Oh yeah, we're gonna give them all fibre optic broadband, and BT like no, actually, because otherwise we would have done that and charged them for it. So it's not really possible.
And Labour promising everything.
Oh, bless them. I mean, like it's just funny.
Let's not digress into politics.
We're not allowed to go for politics. The rules are no politics, apart from when our little better debates and Brexit section, which I wrote about 2 weeks ago and we haven't even touched.
So let's segue back into the pros and cons of living at home.
Yeah. Because it's easy to talk about property prices. That's right. That's all people talk about in London as well. It's either property prices. What do you do for a living? No one cares. And like, it's like in my case, nothing. I run a bar. No, you don't. I wash glasses. It's amazing. No, actually, to be fair, working in a pub's actually quite good fun. I
can imagine.
I like it. It's a nice sociable thing. Anyway, what we're trying to talk about?
Pros or cons of living at home.
Yeah, I mean, I think that. Like, because my motorbike's quite loud, so it's weird, like, coming home at the end of a shift and then being, like, having to sneak in. I mean, obviously, I can't do it anymore, which is a huge pain in the ass, because I used to be able to sort of sneak in, but now it's like... And if I haven't woken mum up, like, I am, like... And then the dog will go off as soon as I'm there, and it's like, oh, no. And, like, although having a dog, the family dog, is quite useful, because it gets you out of the house a bit, and she's a good dog. But again,
I say like the pro for me, like that I was living at home is, for me, I was a self-sufficient person anyway, so I did my own shopping and stuff like that. I did my own laundry. My mom's a Jamaican mother, so she cut me off from the age of like 15, 16.
You're 14 now, boy. Now go and make a living. I can't work legally.
I remember one day when it came to doing the laundry, it was just like probably Sunday or something, and I'm like, Mom, you haven't washed my uniform. Yeah, I'm not doing this anymore.
Fair play.
And I was like, what? And lucky enough, I probably had like a shirt like left over. I think I had like 6 shirts, and I changed my shirts every day. And I had like 1 left over.
She could have warned you a little bit. It's something like,
Sunday night, I had to
happy birthday. Here's your laundry to you.
Yeah. So Sunday night, I had to like learn how to use the washing machine and put my school uniform to wash.
At what point did she even teach you how to cook? You just sit there like trying to make... Oh, she did. All right. Well, fair play. Because my
brother
didn't know how to fry an egg, bless him. Like, I mean, he's
so like by the time I met you guys in uni, I was ready for this. I pretty much took care of myself. I cooked my own meals. I washed my own clothes, made my own beds. I know for like a lot of you guys, was your first time doing it.
I mean, I wouldn't say it was my first time.
Not you particularly, but other people. That
a lot of people when they go to uni,
it's their first time.
You're 18, and I think that's kind of becoming of age.
Yeah. Didn't we have like a friend that burnt rice by not putting any water in it or pasta? One of those two.
No, there was this girl who put allegedly put tins in the freezer because she thought that's how you keep them. And but I think but that's kind of funny. I think that when it's again, it goes back to what we were saying before about when you get that extra responsibilities and like having to figure it all out. And I think that a lot of stuff that people just don't even think you're dumb enough to not know, and you are, and you're just like sitting there like, it's like, why won't the tap stop? No, okay, that's a really dumb example, but it's just like, or like when the power goes out, that's a fucker. But
so
at uni it's quite fun though because you've got like everybody there who's like, it's like, lads, we're fucked.